Singapore, often regarded as a shining beacon of safety and order, was the last place anyone would expect to hear about a crime so chilling it would grip the nation for years. Nestled within this bustling city-state is the Pasir Panjang Wholesale Center, a vibrant market teeming with life. Traders call out to customers, the scent of fresh produce fills the air, and the hum of daily transactions creates an almost musical rhythm. It was a place of familiarity, of trust, of hard work. But in October 2004, this seemingly ordinary backdrop became the stage for an unimaginable tragedy. What happens when trust is betrayed in the most horrifying way? How can someone so loved, so cherished, be harmed by a person they trusted? These questions haunt us, and the answers are both devastating and unthinkable. They were happy at first, but then he did something so monstrous that it shook an entire community to its core. What was it? And how could something so sinister unfold amidst the comfort of a safe and familiar setting? This story begins like any other, a routine day in a bustling market, filled with the hum of activity and the warmth of human connection. But beneath the surface, hidden in the shadows of daily life, a series of events was quietly brewing. Unnoticed by those around, a predator lurked, waiting for the moment when innocence could be stolen, trust shattered, and a life forever extinguished. Imagine a place where everyone knows your name, where laughter echoes through the air, and the faces of friends surround you at every corner. That's the kind of place where this story unfolds, a community so tightly knit that the idea of danger seems almost absurd. This was a world where safety was assumed, where children roamed freely, their joy untainted by fear. Yet, it was in this very environment that something unspeakable occurred, something no one could have prepared for. What's most chilling is the familiarity of it all. The setting wasn't some dark alley or a forgotten corner of the world. No, it happened in plain sight, amongst people who thought they knew each other. It's a story that forces us to confront an unsettling reality. Danger doesn't always come from where we expect it. Sometimes, it comes from the people we trust the most. As the details of this case begin to unfold, one can't help but wonder, could it have been prevented? Was there a moment when things could have taken a different turn, sparing an innocent life? Or was this tragedy inevitable, written into the fabric of the lives intertwined that day? Today, we're peeling back the layers of a case that stunned Singapore and left an entire nation grappling for answers. A tale of betrayal so profound, it leaves us questioning the very nature of trust and the fragile line between innocence and malevolence. What happened that day? How did it come to this? This is a story not just of loss, but of a community's resilience in the face of unspeakable tragedy, a story of heartbreak, justice, and the haunting question, how could someone do the unthinkable to someone they claimed to care about? Stay with us as we unravel the shocking events that led to the heartbreaking loss of innocence and uncover the truth behind one of Singapore's most haunting crimes. Huang was the kind of child who left a mark on everyone she met. Born in the quiet rural landscapes of Putian, Fujian province in China, her early years were shaped by simplicity and resilience. Her family lived modestly, but in the heart of their small home burned a shared hope for a brighter future. Huang Na's mother, Huang Xuxing, was a single parent who carried the weight of this dream on her shoulders. For her daughter's sake, she made the life-changing decision to move to Singapore, a country brimming with opportunities yet far from everything they had ever known. Singapore was a world unlike anything Huang Na had ever seen. The city's towering skyscrapers, bustling streets, and endless energy seemed almost overwhelming for a child who had grown up surrounded by the quiet rhythm of village life. But Huang Na adapted quickly. Children have a way of embracing the unfamiliar, of finding magic in even the smallest things. To her, the bright lights of the Pasir Panjang Wholesale Center were a playground, and the people there became an extended family. Her mother, Xu Ying, worked long hours at the wholesale market, often juggling exhausting shifts to make ends meet. The room they lived in, provided by her employer, was small and simple, but it was home. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and for Huang Na, that was enough. While her mother was busy working, Huang Na would often roam the market's labyrinthine corridors, greeting vendors, helping out where she could, and playing with other children in the area. Huang Na's presence was a breath of fresh air. She was outgoing, cheerful, and fearless in the way only children can be. Her laughter could be heard echoing between the stalls, a sound so infectious it would draw smiles from even the busiest vendors. With her big, bright eyes and an ever-present spark of curiosity, she seemed to embody a boundless energy that lifted the spirits of everyone around her. It wasn't long before Huang Na became a familiar face at the market. Vendors would save small treats for her, fruits, snacks, little trinkets. And she, in turn, would light up their days with her playful chatter. She had a way of making people feel seen and appreciated, an extraordinary trait for someone so young. It was clear to all who met her that she was special, a child full of promise and potential. But beneath this picturesque life lay a layer of vulnerability that no one truly saw. Huang Na and her mother were outsiders in a foreign land. As a single parent, Shu Ying carried an immense burden, and though the market community embraced them, their lives were far from secure. The long hours her mother worked often left Huang Na to her own devices, creating gaps in supervision that would later prove significant. The bustling market, once a place of laughter and joy, held unseen dangers. Its maze-like layout, filled with storerooms and quiet corners, was a world of opportunities for someone with sinister intentions. And though the people who frequented the market were friendly and kind, familiarity can sometimes blind us to the truth. It was this very familiarity that would eventually lead to tragedy. Huang Na's life seemed ordinary at first glance. A story of a little girl finding her way in a new world. But what makes this tale so harrowing is how quickly and quietly things began to shift. The market, which had always been her sanctuary, would soon become the setting for a crime that no one could have anticipated. There were moments, in hindsight, that might have been warnings, subtle, almost imperceptible shifts in the air, strange interactions, fleeting unease, the kind of gut feelings that people often dismiss as paranoia. But no one suspected that danger was looming, especially not in a place where Huang Na was loved and adored. Her innocence was a shield she carried with her, one that made the people around her want to protect her. But innocence can also be a weakness, a vulnerability that those with darker intentions can exploit. Huang Na's charm and openness, the very traits that made her so beloved, would tragically become the reasons she was so easily deceived. On the surface, it was just another day at the bustling Pasir Panjang wholesale center. The market's familiar hum of activity, vendors calling out their prices, the clatter of carts being wheeled across concrete floors, and the scent of fresh produce hanging in the air offered no hint of the tragedy about to unfold. Huang Na, with her cheerful demeanor and boundless energy, blended seamlessly into the lively chaos. But this day, October 10, 2004, would not end as it had so many times before. Her mother, Wang Shuying, had recently traveled back to China to attend to some personal matters, leaving Huang Na in the care of trusted friends. For a young girl so well loved by the community, this arrangement seemed perfectly safe. The market was her second home, filled with people who had watched her grow up. These were familiar faces, people who treated her like family. What harm could possibly come to her in a place so steeped in trust and routine? The morning began uneventfully. Huang Na was seen weaving through the narrow alleys of the market, stopping to chat with vendors and occasionally lending a hand with small tasks. She wore her usual denim jacket and Bermuda shorts, a casual outfit that had become almost iconic to those who knew her. Her laughter, as always, rang out like a melody against the backdrop of bustling commerce. Around midday, Huang Na headed to a nearby food court. This was a place she frequented, a small haven where she could grab a bite or rest her feet. Those who saw her recalled nothing out of the ordinary. She was the same lively and confident child they had always known. But as the day progressed, something began to feel off. When the afternoon stretched into evening with no sign of Huang Na, a gnawing sense of unease settled over the market. At first, her absence was brushed off as a child losing track of time, perhaps distracted by play or visiting a friend. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and the familiar sounds of the market began to quiet, Worry turned to panic. The friends entrusted with her care retraced her usual paths, calling out her name, hoping she would appear with an innocent excuse. Yet every stall, every corner, and every storeroom they searched turned up nothing. Huang Na had vanished. The news of her disappearance spread like wildfire, first within the market and then throughout Singapore. The police were called and a frantic search began. Vendors, customers, and even passers-by joined the effort, scouring the sprawling maze of the wholesale center and its surrounding areas. Taxi drivers, often seen as the lifeline of the city, kept an eye out for any sign of the missing girl, their radios buzzing with updates. Huang Na's mother, upon hearing the devastating news, wasted no time. She booked the first available flight back to Singapore, her mind racing with questions and fears. For a parent, the thought of a child missing is a nightmare beyond comprehension. Xuan Ying's heart ached with guilt for being so far away, for not being there to protect her daughter when it mattered most. As the hours turned into days, the search intensified. Volunteers distributed flyers with Huang Na's photograph, her bright smile and sparkling eyes, a painful reminder of what was at stake. The authorities scoured CCTV footage, combed through witness statements, and followed every lead, no matter how small. Each passing day without answers weighed heavily on everyone involved. For 3 weeks, Singapore held its breath. The city that prided itself on safety and order was now gripped by a deep sense of unease. How could a child disappear so suddenly, so completely, in a place where everyone knew her? Where could she have gone? And most troubling of all, who could have taken her? As the search continued, whispers of suspicion began to ripple through the community. People who had once felt so secure in the market now found themselves questioning everything and everyone. Was it possible that the person responsible for Huang Na's disappearance was someone they knew? Someone they trusted? The market, once a lively hub of commerce and camaraderie, now felt heavy with tension. Every glance lingered too long. Every unfamiliar face drew scrutiny. The community that had always felt so close-knit was now unraveling under the weight of fear and uncertainty. Even as hope remained, there was an unspoken dread among those who knew Huang Na. The question no one wanted to voice lingered in the air. What if she wasn't coming back? Little did they know, the answers they sought were closer than anyone could have imagined. Hidden in the familiar faces and routine exchanges of the market was a truth so horrifying it would leave the entire nation reeling. As the search neared its breaking point, the first threads of this sinister story began to unravel, setting the stage for revelations that would haunt everyone who had come to love the little girl with the bright eyes and endless laughter. The hours were ticking by, and the weight of unanswered questions loomed heavy. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, just not in the way anyone could have prepared for. The search for Huang Na stretched into its 3rd week, and with every passing day, the weight of uncertainty grew heavier. The once vibrant and hopeful market was now cloaked in a somber silence. Familiar faces that had always been warm and welcoming now seemed distant, their smiles replaced with furrowed brows and searching eyes. Whispers of doubt and suspicion began to ripple through the community. In that moment, Inca was made a witch of her own. The heroic, could it be someone among them? Could the person responsible for Huang Na's disappearance be someone they had trusted all along? As investigators pieced together timelines and testimonies, one name began to emerge: Tuk Lung Hao. He wasn't a stranger to the market or to Huang Na. Tuk, a 22-year-old Malaysian vegetable packer, had been a part of the market's fabric for some time. His work brought him into close contact with many vendors, and he had developed a rapport with Huang Na and her. In fact, Tuk wasn't just an acquaintance, he was considered a friend. He often played with Huang Na, helping to keep her entertained while her mother was busy working. To those who knew him, Tuk seemed harmless. He was soft-spoken, unassuming, and had never shown any overt signs of aggression or malice. But as the investigation deepened, small inconsistencies began to surface, painting a far more complex picture. When questioned about Huang Na's disappearance, Tuk initially appeared cooperative. He claimed he had seen her on the day she vanished, but his account was riddled with contradictions. His story of unknown men abducting Huang Na raised more questions than it answered. Witnesses at the market didn't recall seeing anything unusual, and there were no signs of struggle or distress that would support his claim. Then there was his demeanor. While most of the market community was visibly shaken, Tuk seemed strangely detached. His calmness, which once seemed to reflect his reserved nature, now appeared unnervingly out of place. People began to recall subtle moments that, at the time, hadn't seemed significant. Tuk had been spending more time around Huang Na in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, sometimes appearing overly attentive. As the pressure mounted, Tuk's behavior took a dramatic turn. Without warning, he fled Singapore, crossing the border into Malaysia. This act of flight sent shockwaves through the investigation. Why would an innocent man run? What was he trying to escape? The news of his sudden disappearance reignited fears and cast an even darker shadow over an already grim situation. The authorities wasted no time in issuing a warrant for his arrest and coordinating with their Malaysian counterparts. Tuk's flight was a stark contrast to his earlier cooperative demeanor and raised suspicions to new heights. But even as the search for him intensified, no one could have anticipated what would come next. What Tuk resurfaced in Malaysia days later, turning himself in to local authorities. His surrender was unexpected, and for a brief moment it seemed as though answers were finally within reach. He was extradited to Singapore to face questioning, and the entire nation held its breath, waiting to hear what he would say. The interrogation room became the stage for a chilling unraveling. Under pressure, Tuk began to speak, his calm exterior giving way to a confession that would send shockwaves through the community. The man they thought they knew, the friend who had played with Huang Na and laughed alongside her, was not who he seemed. What Tuk revealed was not just an admission of guilt, but a horrifying glimpse into the darkness that had been hidden beneath his seemingly benign facade. It was a truth that no one wanted to believe, a betrayal so profound it would leave scars that would never heal. As the details of his confession emerged, the illusion of safety and trust that had defined the market shattered completely. The story of Huang Na's disappearance was no longer a mystery. It was a tragedy of unimaginable proportions. But the most haunting question remained. Why? What could drive someone to commit such an unthinkable act? The answers, as they would soon discover, were as twisted and unsettling as the crime itself. And as the community grappled with the truth, the investigation moved forward, uncovering even more disturbing details about what had happened on that fateful day. The weight of Tuk Leng Hao's confession was like a thunderclap over a community already raw with grief and disbelief. The man, who had once been a trusted figure in Huang Na's life, admitted to taking it away. But the story he told seemed almost designed to downplay the horror of his actions. He claimed it was an accident, a tragic mishap during an innocent game of hide-and-seek in a storeroom at the market. But, as investigators delved deeper, it became painfully clear that Tuk's version of events was riddled with inconsistencies. The evidence painted a far more calculated and sinister picture. The storeroom, which should have been a safe haven for a playful child, had instead become the scene of unimaginable violence. The search for Huang Na had ended days earlier, in one of the most gut-wrenching discoveries imaginable. Her body was found at Telok Blangah Hill Park, wrapped tightly in plastic bags and hidden with chilling precision. It was a location far removed from the bustling market where she had last been seen, a quiet wooded area where Tuk had sought to erase all traces of his crime. The state of her body left no room for doubt. This was no accident. The autopsy report revealed bruises on her head indicating blunt force trauma and signs of asphyxiation. These findings pointed to a deliberate act of violence, one that shattered Tuk's claim of an accidental death. Huang Na's life hadn't ended because of a game gone wrong. It had been stolen, in an act of pure brutality. As the investigation continued, the details of Tuk's actions on that fateful day began to emerge, each revelation more horrifying than the last. In the hours after her death, Tuk had taken meticulous steps to cover his tracks. He had purchased the plastic bags used to wrap her body, transported her remains in a borrowed trolley, and selected the remote location of Telok Blangah Hill Park to dispose of them. These were not the actions of a panicked man overwhelmed by a tragic accident. They were the cold, calculated decisions of someone trying to evade justice. For the community, the reality of Tuk's betrayal was almost too much to bear. This was a man who had played with Huang, shared meals with her family, and been welcomed into their lives. How could someone so seemingly ordinary, so unassuming, commit such an atrocity? The public's reaction was a mixture of grief, outrage, and disbelief. Huang had been a symbol of innocence, her bright smile and cheerful spirit a beacon of joy in the busy market. Her death felt like an assault on that innocence, a reminder that even the most familiar faces can hide unfathomable darkness. As news of Tuk's confession and the evidence against him spread, the case became a lightning rod for discussions about trust, safety, and the hidden dangers that can lurk in plain sight. Parents held their children a little closer, and the bustling Pasir Panjang Wholesale Center, once a place of laughter and camaraderie, now felt heavy with sorrow and suspicion. Tuk's attempts to explain his actions did little to garner sympathy. His claims of innocence contradicted the damning evidence, and his demeanor during interrogations further alienated him from a public desperate for answers. His flight to Malaysia, his calculated disposal of Huang Na's body, and his web of lies only deepened the sense of betrayal. The weight of Tuk Leng Hao's confession was like a thunderclap over a community already raw with grief and disbelief. The man, who had once been a trusted figure in Huang Na's life, admitted to taking it away, but the story he told seemed almost designed to downplay the horror of his actions. He claimed it was an accident, a tragic mishap during an innocent game of hide-and-seek in a storeroom at the market. But, as investigators delved deeper, it became painfully clear that Tuk's version of events was riddled with inconsistencies. The evidence painted a far more calculated and sinister picture. The storeroom, which should have been a safe haven for a playful child, had instead become the scene of unimaginable violence. The search for Huang Na had ended days earlier, in one of the most gut-wrenching discoveries imaginable. Her body was found at Telok Blangah Hill Park, wrapped tightly in plastic bags and hidden with chilling precision. It was a location far removed from the bustling market where she had last been seen, a quiet wooded area where Tuk had sought to erase all traces of his crime. The state of her body left no room for doubt. This was no accident. The autopsy report revealed bruises on her head indicating blunt force trauma and signs of asphyxiation. These findings pointed to a deliberate act of violence, one that shattered Tuk's claim of an accidental death. Huang Na's life hadn't ended because of a game gone wrong. It had been stolen, in an act of pure brutality. As the investigation continued, the details of Tuk's actions on that fateful day began to emerge, each revelation more horrifying than the last. In the hours after her death, Tuk had taken meticulous steps to cover his tracks. He had purchased the plastic bags used to wrap her body, transported her remains in a borrowed trolley, and selected the remote location of Telok Blangah Hill Park to dispose of them. These were not the actions of a panicked man overwhelmed by a tragic accident. They were the cold, calculated decisions of someone trying to evade justice. For the community, the reality of Tuk's betrayal was almost too much to bear. This was a man who had played with Huang Na, shared meals with her family, and been welcomed into their lives. How could someone so seemingly ordinary, so unassuming, commit such an atrocity? The public's reaction was a mixture of grief, outrage, and disbelief. Huang Na had been a symbol of innocence, her bright smile and cheerful spirit a beacon of joy in the busy market. Her death felt like an assault on that innocence, a reminder that even the most familiar faces can hide unfathomable darkness. As news of Tuk's confession and the evidence against him spread, the case became a lightning rod for discussions about trust, safety, and the hidden dangers that can lurk in plain sight. Parents held their children a little closer, and the bustling Pasir Panjang Wholesale Center, once a place of laughter and camaraderie, now felt heavy with sorrow and suspicion. Tuk's attempts to explain his actions did little to garner sympathy. His claims of innocence contradicted the damning evidence, and his demeanor during interrogations further alienated him from a public desperate for answers. His flight to Malaysia, his calculated disposal of Huang Na's body, and his web of lies only deepened the sense of betrayal. For Huang Na's family, the pain was immeasurable. Her mother, who had left her in what she thought were safe hands, was now faced with the unimaginable reality that her trust had been so cruelly violated. The woman who had worked tirelessly to provide a better life for her daughter was left to grapple with a loss that no parent should ever endure. But as the case moved forward, another question began to take shape. What had driven Tuk to commit such a heinous act? Was it premeditated, an outburst of rage, or something even darker, buried deep within a mind no one had truly understood? The trial that would follow promised to unearth these answers, but it also threatened to expose the scars that such a crime leaves behind, not just on the victim's family, but on an entire community. As the nation prepared for what would be one of its most high-profile cases, the collective heartbreak was accompanied by a simmering demand for justice. Huang Na's story was no longer just about the tragic loss of a young life. It had become a mirror reflecting the vulnerabilities and flaws of a society that prided itself on safety and trust. And as the legal proceedings began, the question lingered: would justice bring closure, or would the haunting legacy of this crime continue to echo for years to come? The stage was set for a trial that would expose every harrowing detail of what had happened to Huang Na. But even as the world prepared to hear Tuk's defense, one undeniable truth remained. No explanation could ever erase the pain of what had been lost. Tuk Leng Hao's trial in 2005 was one of the most closely followed cases in Singapore's history, a grim spectacle that laid bare the harrowing details of Huang Na's final moments. The courtroom was filled with a palpable sense of grief and outrage as the public waited to see justice served for the innocent life so cruelly taken. Tuk's trial began on July 11, 2005, in the High Court presided over by Justice Lai Q. Chai. The prosecution, led by Deputy Public Prosecutor Lawrence Eng, presented a case that left little room for doubt. Key pieces of evidence included a video of Tuk reenacting the murder, forensic findings, and an autopsy report indicating several bruises on Huang Na's head. The prosecution alleged that Tuk had lured Huang Na to the storeroom, sexually assaulted her, and then smothered and stomped on her to ensure her death. However, due to the body's decomposition and the absence of semen, there was no conclusive proof of sexual assault. The cause of death was determined to be asphyxia. The defense, led by lawyer Subhas Anandan, argued diminished responsibility. Psychiatrist R. Nagulendrand testified that Tuk was schizophrenic, exhibited inappropriate behavior, and had a low IQ of 76. However, the prosecution's psychiatrist, G. Satyadevan, contended that Tuk did not suffer from any mental abnormality. Tuk did not feel disappointed. Now, he got schizophrenic and was believed to be not powerless to control the disease himself. On August 27, 2005, Justice Lai found Tuk guilty of murder and sentenced him to death, stating that the murder was clearly the product of a cold and calculating mind. Tuk appealed the death sentence, but the Court of Appeal upheld the decision in January 2006 by a 2-1 majority. Chief Justice Yong Pung Hao and Judge of Appeal Chow Hik Tin agreed with the conviction, while High Court Judge Kan Ting Chu dissented, citing inconclusive cause of death. A clemency plea to President S.R. Nathan, supported by 3,5,0,0,0 signatures, was rejected in October 2006. Tuk Leng Hao was executed by hanging on November 3, 2006. Huang Na's disappearance and murder had a profound impact on the Singaporean community. Thousands attended her wake and funeral, offering contributions and gifts such as sweets, flowers, and her favorite Hello Kitty merchandise. However, not all the responses were altruistic. Some individuals attempted to profit from the tragedy by buying lottery numbers associated with her and spreading unfounded rumors about her mother. The trial, appeal, and eventual execution of Tuk Leng Hao marked the conclusion of a painful chapter in Singapore's history. For some, his execution brought closure. For others, it left lingering questions about how such a tragedy could occur and whether justice had truly been served. Huang Na's story became a turning point in Singapore's collective consciousness, highlighting not only the vulnerability of children, but also the complexities surrounding mental health in criminal proceedings and the use of the death penalty. Her case remains one of Singapore's most high-profile criminal cases, serving as a sobering reminder of the fragility of innocence and the importance of vigilance in protecting children. Her mother, Huang returned to China after the trial, carrying with her the weight of unimaginable loss. She chose to honor her daughter's memory by advocating for child safety and resilience, channeling her grief into something that could benefit others. Huang Na's life, though tragically cut short, became a symbol of the enduring strength of a mother's love and the need to protect those who cannot protect themselves. As we reflect on this heartbreaking story, it serves as a reminder of the preciousness of life and the shared responsibility to create a safer world for children. If you believe children deserve to be safe, loved, and cherished, subscribe to the channel. Only those who think it's okay for children to be harmed would choose not to subscribe. Let's stand together in Huang Na's memory, ensuring her legacy inspires a world where no child is ever left unprotected.